Real cameras like this are great. I use these for work every single day outside of this YouTube channel, as well as for the video that you're watching right now. And I'm not gonna tell you that gear doesn't matter, because it does. But this is with you everywhere you go. So wouldn't it be nice to know exactly how to get the most out of it? To get good at iPhone car photography, we first have to understand the limitations that we're up against. And if you've got an older phone like mine, there's a lot of them. But as Orson Welles said, the enemy of art is the absence of limitations. Limitation 1 is that you're stuck with whatever lens or lenses you happen to have on the back of your phone. In my case, with this iPhone 11, we're working with a 26mm f1.8 lens, as well as a 13mm f2.4 lens, both of them being 12 megapixels. Limitation 2 is a deep depth of field. This means that especially on phones without a telephoto lens, you won't get much separation between the subject that you want in focus and the background. Most of your image is going to be in focus. If you're used to shooting with mirrorless cameras or DSLRs, you might be thinking, hey, wait a second, you just said that this iPhone has an aperture of f1.8. Shouldn't that mean that we get really nice bokeh and a shallow depth of field? Well, unfortunately, the sensor size in your iPhone is probably about a quarter of the size of the sensor in this camera, which means that you really won't get much of a shallow depth of field unless you move up to the telephoto lens. And even then, it won't quite be on the level of something like a mirrorless camera or a DSLR. If you really want a blurry background with your phone, you can use portrait mode, but typically it doesn't give the best results, so personally I tend to stay away from it. Limitation number 3 is that the stock camera app on the iPhone really does not give you too much control, especially if you're on a non-pro model phone. Now, whatever you do, do not compare your phone specs to the latest and greatest from Apple or Google or Samsung or whoever. Ignorance is bliss in this case. If you happen to have a newer phone with great camera specs, that's awesome. You'll get even better results than I can with my phone. But realistically, all of the tips in this video are gonna work with any phone. So what I'm trying to say is don't go out and buy a new phone, just work with what you've got. Now that we know the limitations of your camera, what can we do about it? Well, we're gonna make up for it by choosing a great location, finding great lighting, and creating great compositions. First, let's talk about lighting, which can completely change the look of your photo. And since we're shooting cars, we're probably gonna be outdoors, which means that we are not gonna have a ton of control over our light source. It's like 150 million kilometers away, so you're gonna have a pretty hard time changing the intensity or temperature. There's not really a dial for that. Another limitation, but remember what Orson Welles said. So how do we overcome this? Well, we want to avoid harsh top-down lighting. It really just does not add any visual interest to your photo. Ideally, we want the light to be hitting the car from the side. Any side, really. Personally, I really like the look of backlit car photos, but any direction other than top-down is great. To achieve this, we'll want to plan to shoot when the sun is low in the sky. Obviously, sunrise, sunset, golden hour, great times to shoot, but you can use an app like Sun Tracker AR to figure out exactly where the sun's going to be at different times of day. Overcast days are a great option as well. It basically creates the world's biggest softbox, which will give you nice, even lighting across your whole car. I've been trying to make this guide as cheap and basically free as possible and encourage you to work with what you've got. But if there's one accessory that I'd recommend you buy to improve your car photos, it would be a polarizing filter. This will remove some of the reflections that you see in your photo and really bring out the color of the car, as well as allow you to see through the windows. But definitely not a necessity. Don't buy anything you don't need. We know when we want to shoot, but now we have to figure out where we want to shoot, which is actually especially important if you're shooting with your iPhone, because you won't be able to use a shallow depth of field to hide an ugly background. Personally, I like to use the satellite view on Google Maps, and if you hold shift and drag around, you can change the camera angle to something a bit lower, which will give you a decent idea of what will be in the background of your photos. I'd also recommend turning on the street view layer so you can see which roads are accessible to the public and drop in for a better view. If you drop some pins and add them to a list, you'll start to build a nice collection of photo spots that you already know are great. If you happen to live in or around Vancouver, BC, Lower Mainland, that sort of area, I've created a list of great photo spots and I'm constantly adding to it. It's linked in the description. I know I said earlier that the stock iPhone camera app kind of sucks and limits the settings that you can change, so you're probably already typing out a comment about how I should use some third-party camera app that can change the shutter speed and all that stuff, which is great. But for this video, we're just gonna be using the stock camera app for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's free, whereas all of the third-party camera apps that I've personally seen either charge you a monthly subscription or a one-time fee, or you get a free version, but it's like super limited, and then you basically might as well use the stock camera app anyway. The whole point of this video was to encourage you not to spend any money and take cool photos of your car, so it would be kind of hypocritical if I encouraged you to purchase some third-party camera app. So for this one, we're just gonna stick with the stock camera app. Yes, it does limit you a little bit, but I'd like to look at that limitation as an opportunity to focus your time on other things like lighting, composition, and location. That being said, with the stock camera app, there are a few settings that we can change that will improve your experience. If you're planning on sharing your photos on Instagram or some other social media platform, I'd recommend changing the camera capture setting from high efficiency to most compatible. This will mean that you're shooting JPEG instead of HEIF, which is ideal for platforms like Instagram because they're going to convert your HEIF files to JPEGs when you post anyway, so you might as well have control over it. If you happen to be on a newer iPhone that allows you to shoot RAW, definitely do that, by far the best option, and then you can convert to JPEG after your edit. And one more thing in the camera settings, I'd recommend turning on the grid and the level, and we'll talk about why later. Now, I promise we're so close to actually shooting photos, but there's one more thing that I need you to do before you take any photos, and that is wipe the lens of your camera. Your phone's moving around in your hand all day long, and 90% of the time you're not even thinking of it as a camera that you should kind of take care of, so chances are there's some nice smudges all over the lens that are gonna make your photos look super hazy. So just take your t-shirt, give it a quick wipe, and you're good. If you happen to have a microfiber cloth, that's even better, but a t-shirt really won't do any damage to an iPhone camera lens. Okay, so now we've got great lighting, we've got a cool location, we've got our settings dialed in, we have a clean camera lens. It's finally time to take some photos. If there's one thing that you take away from this video, please let it be this. Do not take a photo of your car framed up edge to edge. This is very rarely a flattering angle, especially on a phone camera. Just give your car some space to breathe. I'd recommend either backing up a little bit or moving a little closer. If you want to back up, that's awesome. You can give your car a little bit more space to breathe, allow the cool location that you found to factor into the photo. Or if you want to get a little bit closer, you can focus on the details and the lines of the car, and that can look great as well. I would just recommend staying away from the angle where you're just framing the car edge to edge, especially on the focal length that you get with the main iPhone camera. It very, very rarely looks good. When you're framing up your car, there's a few options that tend to give you great results, and this is why we turned on the grid. You can have the car directly in the middle of the frame, pretty simple, but it tends to look good. If you want to show off a little bit more of the sky, you can also keep the car in the middle of the frame, but tilt your phone up a little bit and have the car intersect with that bottom third line. Tends to look pretty good. You can also frame the car up in a way that intersects with the corner of that grid, whether that be the wheel right on the corner or the mirror or the front bumper. Just in general, when things line up with that grid, it tends to look pleasing to the eye. We also turned on the level earlier. If this line is yellow across the middle of your screen, that means that your horizon is level, which again is just pleasing to the eye. It's always been a pet peeve of mine to see car photos that are just slightly off where the horizon's not level, but if you're doing it for a creative reason, that's all good. Be creative, that's cool. I personally use the 1x lens most of the time. I prefer the look of that for car photos over the 0.5 lens. But in certain scenarios, if you want to get a funky, like low angle close up of the wheel or something, that can definitely be cool with the 0.5 lens. But for the most part, I tend to use the 1x lens. Here's some angles that you can use with pretty much any car, any camera, it doesn't matter. These tend to always look good. I'm a big fan of the top down front quarter of the car, kind of hood, wheel, headlight kind of area. It's not a perspective that you see super often, which makes it look pretty cool. Eye level is also a great option, and by eye level, I mean like eye level with the car, so eye level with the headlight. There's a reason that you always see car photographers squatting at car meets to take photos. It's just a nice looking angle for most cars. Close-ups of things like wheels, headlights, or badges, or any personal touches that the owner has added to the car can also make for some super interesting shots. When it comes to the interior, one of the best angles that I typically go for is behind the driver's seat looking at the steering wheel. It's one of the few angles that you can actually get a little bit of foreground blur with an iPhone camera, and for the most part, the steering wheel is kind of the best looking thing in the interior of most cars. And an option that not a lot of people consider is to move way back and kind of get more of a landscape shot that happens to have your car in the middle of it, or if you're somewhere like a parking garage, you can go up a floor and shoot down on it. That's a pretty cool one too. At this point, you've probably covered a lot of the main angles of your car, so now I would pretty much just recommend walking around your car with your phone in your hands, point it at the car, look at the phone screen the whole time, and just walk around to different angles, and I'm gonna guarantee that you're gonna find some cool angles that you never would have considered, but they might become your new favorite angle. Now, are you gonna take photos for magazines and billboards and become a professional photographer with an iPhone 11? Probably not, but if you're shooting for something like social media or just to sell your car on Facebook Marketplace, this can definitely get the job done. So that's the beginner's guide to iPhone car photography. If this video does well, we might consider making another one about how to edit these photos, but for now, feel free to leave any questions that you might have in the comments down below.